Welcome to MGO Bucks. Matt, it has been an amazing run for the last 3 weeks for Michigan. I think that I don't know how a team actually falls from grace that quickly. I think I looked back at what we actually, what I actually used for the thumbnail and for the title of the last video, and it has not aged well. It was something like Michigan's going to shock Texas. And if seriously, if someone ever invents a time machine, that's like one of the top 5 things I'm going back in time to change. But yeah, and Michigan plays USC this week. I was already looking at this game against USC even before they had like thoughts of a defense that this would be a tough game for Michigan just based on what they lost or what they had. And that's before I even saw Michigan play a game. I am getting really, really scared about Michigan's season. I'm sure that you are probably enjoying all this from your little Buckeye land over there. What do you say?
Yeah, I think you guys actually match up decently well against USC though. Texas was just they're good at everything. And, against a well-rounded team that can exploit any little problems in your defense. I thought your defense would obviously hold up better than it did. But it's tough when you can't really do anything on offense. It puts a lot of extra pressure on your defense. But they still didn't play well. But I think going forward, having a running quarterback, and now they finally realize that Mullings is the true running back, and I think they're going to throw in and still rotate. But I think having just go back to the Harbaugh style of getting 9 offensive linemen, a running quarterback, and a running back, and I think you guys will be fine, at least against USC. I still have doubts that USC is going to be able to stop your running game. Even though their defense is better this year, I still don't think that they're going to do a great job stopping your running game. I think you probably aren't going to pass much, if at all. I'm guessing it's going to be like under 10 pass attempts for the game, and for Michigan. And I think, you're the highest rated defender, I think, last week for Michigan was your number 2 corner. So having 2 really good corners on your team and, good defensive linemen, I think they're going to have a really hard time being that, they're a pass team. Their running game isn't terrible, but, I think that their USC is mostly a passing team. So I think you guys match up well there. They're not going to be able to run up the middle. They're not going to be able to pass well. It's at Michigan, and you guys should be able to run okay. So, I just don't think you guys are going to score a ton of points, but I think you'll be able to slow the game down and, make a few key maybe turnovers or force some turnovers on defense and get enough of the running game to, get your, 24 points, or actually it's probably more like, I don't know, let's see, 23 points, because you're going to have a couple field goals in there. And, you guys do have a good field goal kicker. So it's probably going to be like, maybe one or 2 touchdowns and a whole bunch of field goals. And, that might be enough.
Yeah, you think so? Well, I guess
I'm actually thinking about taking Michigan in the points for the gambling aspect of it, just because I think you guys are going to definitely cover.
It's 5.5 right now, I think.
Yeah.
It's 5.5. Michigan's at home. Yeah, it doesn't, but think about how flaky it is for a football team of Michigan's caliber, just coming off a national title game. 3 games in, and they're already switching their quarterbacks. Like, how flaky?
Well, he was supposed to be the star at the beginning of the year, wasn't he? Like, going in the summer.
Yeah. But then we had Davis Warren, and then now you have to think about, now we have to play the guy that couldn't beat out Davis Warren in practice.
And what was it against? Was it last week where I guess Warren had no incompletions the whole game, right?
Yeah, that's the mind-boggling part of all this. All of his incompletions are interceptions, but you can't turn the ball over.
All 3 of them.
Yeah, that was a wild stat. But Alex Orji is going to be the quarterback now, and I'm excited to see him. I'm excited to see him actually get a chance, because that was probably the most thing that I was most excited about that for the whole season. is seeing Alex Orji and what he's going to be. But I lost that enthusiasm once I saw that Davis Warren beat him out.
Yeah, that's a little scary. I mean, it could have just been a, sometimes people are better playing, better during practice, and then when the game, with the pressure, they just fold. So he might have just been a bad game time quarterback. So we'll see. Maybe Orji. I mean, Orji doesn't have to be great. I mean, to beat USC, this is not like this is Texas, right? So USC is, I think probably a top 15 to 20 team.
I think they're like in the top 10 right now.
I'm just saying what I think they'll be by the end of the year. I don't think that they're a top 10 team. I think by the end of the year, I think that they're gonna lose probably to you guys, and
you
I don't
think
know.
that?
Yeah, I don't know. Like I don't have any faith. Like I don't have a whole lot of faith in Michigan this year, but I have even less faith in USC. I just have to see it. Like they've been bad for so even with Caleb Williams they couldn't win, and now everyone's saying, oh well, the defense is actually good now. I'm like, I mean they slowed down LSU a little bit, but LSU isn't great this year either, on offense or defense. So I mean it was a good win, but not like it was an amazing win or anything. I mean, it's definitely be close. I mean, home field advantage is still a big deal, and I think that I'm hoping that. Well, I mean, I hope you guys lose, but I think that Michigan's going to win though.
Oh, thanks. Well, you know what? I mean, it's probably the easiest thing in the world too at this point. When your team is down and you're switching quarterbacks, it's not like if Alex Orji just really stinks it up, they can just put Davis Warren in. I mean, this might be a thing where like half of the Michigan football team is in the locker room and they all want, half of them want Alex Orji to get his chance. And now you're just letting him go out and give him the chance to lose the job, essentially.
So whatever happened to Jack Tuttle?
He's injured. He's got
still.
Yeah, he's got some sort of lingering injury. Sharon Moore said that he's had setbacks. Still not ready to go. I'm not sure what it is, and still, it's not like.
And what about your freshman?
I mean, it's. Yeah. I mean, Jack Tuttle is not going to be the answer either. Maybe he'll be better than the other two guys. I don't know. I'm kind of willing to take anything right now. But
what about the freshman quarterback?
Bad place to be for Michigan.
What about your freshman quarterback, though? What about him?
His family said they don't want him to play. Jaden Davis said they don't want. That's the rumor. I don't know that for sure. But that's the rumor that his family's like, hey, I don't really want our kid to go out there into a disaster like that. Like nothing is going right for Michigan. I mean, if you think about the good things, they still have good players on defense. They've got the running game. I mean, that came back to life this past week. But nothing is going to plan. We were all like Donovan Edwards. He's going to be on the cover of what game is that? Shit, I don't
Madden.
Not
Madden. The college, whatever the college is.
But he's on the cover.
NCAA 2024.
Yeah, that's embarrassing. The backup running back is now actually the best running back. And he looks really good, so I don't want to take away from him.
I think it's funny that our third string quarterback has better yards than Donovan Edwards, and he's only played 2 games.
Yeah, Donovan Edwards looks slow. He looks slow and meandering when he's running around back there. And the offensive line isn't helping him either. It's just a shocking place to be because I remember earlier in the season, a lot of Michigan fans had a lot of optimism because we thought, hey, Sharon Moore is a great offensive line coach, obviously, based on history. We'll at least have a solid offensive line, right? Enough veterans to say, hey, we'll have a solid offensive line.
Well, yeah, you kept telling me, and all the Michigan fans on Twitter kept telling me that all the guys, while they're replacing their top 6 offensive linemen, they all have had experience, so they should be fine with good coaching.
Yes, that makes perfectly good sense until, you
can't lose the whole line. No one replaces the whole line and doesn't have problems.
Well, maybe not. I mean, obviously we couldn't do it. But then the biggest surprise is the defense.
Yeah.
The defense is bad. I mean, against Texas, I don't know if you remember this, but how many third downs there were, and third down and longs that they just gave up. It looks like John Brown out there. And that's
everyone was excited just because they got wasn't he from the Ravens too? So they got another Ravens coordinator.
Yeah, he's got history with the Ravens, the godfather of the Ravens offensive scheme, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, your last two defense coordinators were amazing, but they also had Connor Stallions, so we'll see.
Yeah, I'm sure Connor Stallions. If we only had Connor Stallions, we'd be so much better right now.
Yep.
That would matter.
It definitely helps.
That would actually help the defense be in position. A bunch of young guys. And now it's looking back on it, losing out on Rod Moore, the safety, is huge now. And I don't think any of those guys lack athleticism or talent. They're just so young, they don't know where to be. And they're going through all these growing pains against these really good freaking teams, or really great offenses anyway, like Texas and USC. I mean,
so in my opinion, the most inexcusable thing that happened to Michigan this offseason was the fact that you guys let Oregon get a backup quarterback to go there instead of coming to Michigan to start. Dante Moore decided to go there as a backup. He could have been starting for the national title defending Michigan Wolverines, and he decided, I mean, obviously they paid him well, but the fact that you guys couldn't outbid whatever they gave him for backup money, I mean, that's bad, dude. I mean, I don't know. Did you guys even try to get him?
I have no idea. I only saw articles about him looking at Michigan.
I mean, he did well at UCLA, and UCLA sucks. So.
Well, you know what? It's that's the most inexcusable thing probably in the history in the 2020s.
You have this. These are your quarterbacks on your roster. Did someone think that Alex Orji was going to be this amazing quarterback all of a sudden and figure out how to pass?
What they were thinking. But here's the thing. What you said, inexcusable, that's the most inexcusable thing.
Yeah.
Michigan having all three of those 5-star quarterbacks out of Michigan and not getting any of them. Now, granted, they got Jaden Davis, but they didn't get – if they had gotten Dante Moore, they'd be in a better situation, maybe. But Dante Moore hasn't proven necessarily to be a superstar quarterback at the same time. He's had to
he's a superstar compared to everything on your roster right now.
Let me ask you this. We could have probably gone out and gotten Ohio State's former quarterback, Kyle McCord.
That's what you should have done just for the
why would you want to go
karma?
If you're in your last year and you're trying to put on a show for the NFL, why would you go to Michigan, who just lost 6 offensive linemen and they don't pass the ball, and they're playing one of the hardest the hardest schedules in all of college football? I mean, it doesn't take a genius for anyone or anyone's parents or any player to be I think I'm just not going to go to Michigan.
Yeah, no receivers too. Don't forget that.
They would be tough. Yeah, the NFL would not look at them very well. Granted, though, Kyle McCord, if he was at Michigan right now, the way he's playing at Syracuse, man, I would totally take Kyle McCord right now.
Oh yeah,
totally take him. But I mean, at the same time, I mean, we're in this situation, and it's one of our own making because the transfer portal, obviously, that was open before the playoffs, or even during the playoffs. I think it opened before the playoffs started. So no one even knew if JJ McCarthy was for sure going to jump to the NFL at that point. So, and then we went to the national title, which elongated that whole process. There was JJ. None of those transfer quarterbacks would have known at the time if Harbaugh was going to be staying, because the rumors were flying around. In the last 3 years, if you were a top quarterback, would you have gone to Michigan, knowing what you know about Harbaugh and him trying to go to the NFL for all 3 years? Probably not. I mean, their recruiting has stunk, or has been badly average for all those years that they've been going to the playoffs. State. I mean, thank you, Jim Harbaugh, for the national title, but man, did he screw us in the future.
I mean, they had a couple of years where they, really recruited well, that they pulled some diamonds, and they also, got a few 5-stars here and there that panned out, obviously. And then, getting like Hutchinson and, pretty much everyone on the defensive line, all their offensive linemen. I think they had a high profile transfer who was a Remington Award winner that he transferred over from Virginia, probably paid him a lot of money. You got the Barner tight end from Indiana.
Yeah.
You guys have been getting, a good amount of transfers that were very high impact transfers. You didn't get a lot, but the ones you did get were really, really good. And then they had a lot of 4-star guys that turned into superstars.
Yeah.
But now they're not getting those 4-stars to turn to superstars.
Well, at least not in the first 3 games of this year.
Yeah.
But I just had so much more hopes for the defense, because even against Texas, if the defense played the way we thought they were going to play, then they would have probably been able to stop them. Michigan wouldn't have been in desperation passing mode with Davis Warren.
So, the reason why I'm not so worried is have you seen sort of what's going on in the NFL lately? So if you look at Harbaugh, his team, he's making, J.K. Dobbins is leading the league in rushing yards, which helps me for my fantasy football team. But, there's a lot of teams, and they're barely passing the ball. And then you have, Green Bay, who has elite receivers and had a great quarterback who's injured now. So what did they do? They just basically did wing T, and were just had a running quarterback who couldn't pass at all. And they smoked the Colts because they just ran the ball every play. And so you have multiple teams now in the NFL. They're just they don't have enough talent to really do anything except for run, but they're really good at running, and it's working. And so I don't know why they can't just do that in college. And it's much easier to do that in college if you have the personnel to pull it off, which Michigan should. So that's why I'm not really worried. And I think by the time you guys play us, if Orgy doesn't have to be great, he just has to make a few play action passes every game, just a couple. And the running game with him and the running backs, assuming he stays healthy, should be good enough to win all your games, really. I don't see why you guys, everyone is really down. I don't have any faith on Penn State. I have a little bit of faith in USC. They're the only ones, but not even a ton. I still think that as of now, that if they go for the hardcore running the ball 90% of the time, I think that for the Big Ten, it's probably enough to win most of their games.
I think if they turn into Nebraska of the 90s, that would be awesome. The thing is, Nebraska of the 90s always had a bruising offensive line, always.
Yeah.
Michigan's got the running backs to do that. They don't have the offensive line.
The line is inexperienced. So what I'm saying is it going to be good enough? Can they get through the USC game? And if they can, there's no more Texas on the schedule, so they aren't gonna have another hard game really until they play us. So if you guys can somehow pull this out,
Michigan's got to play Oregon.
Yeah,
and they've got to go. They play at Washington too. So
Washington just lost to Washington State. I don't think they're that good.
Maybe not.
So it's basically just Oregon, USC, Oregon, and us, right?
Oregon is looking down, but I'm guessing they're not as bad as they.
Yeah, they played well last week. They finally stepped it up.
Well, and speaking of the Big Ten and how teams are just kind of not looking great, that really puts Ohio State in a good position because they've got the schedule, and they're the only team that really looks devastating.
Yeah, plus we've only played 2 games against bad opponents, so you can't really. It's hard. I can still sort of judge it. People say, you play, a powder puff team, you can't really judge that because there's some teams in the past, like Ole Miss historically, the last few years especially, they had really good offenses and they just blow out their cupcakes. But then whenever they play a team with a pulse, granted Georgia's more than a team with a pulse, but when they play a good team like that, they lose by 3 touchdowns and it's not close. So Alabama and Georgia and whatever, they just smoke Ole Miss, even though they destroy their cupcakes. Obviously, that's different than Ohio State. And I just know, from watching our team, I can sort of tell over the years, do you remember last year? We beat Indiana to open the year, 20-7 or something horrible. Indiana wasn't terrible, but they weren't good enough that they should have held us to 20 points. That's just absurd. So, I've had, the Tressel years, the Urban Meyer years, and now Ryan Day, and I just know, like, when the team is really talented, I mean, it's just unbelievable the talent that we have everywhere. Like the skill positions, like really, I mean, it's the only thing that, I mean, it's probably the most like all around skill talent we've had since, CJ Stroud throwing to Garrett Wilson, JSN, and Chris Olave. But even that team didn't have the running game that we have. So that potentially makes this team a little bit better because we have Emeka and Jeremiah Smith, who are both going to be first-round picks. And then Carnell Tate, it's his first year starting, so we don't really know. He's obviously not the talent that Jeremiah Smith is, but he's, potentially a high round pick as well. And then, you have two running backs that are going to probably go in the late first or second round, and Judkins and Travion Henderson. It's just stupid talent. So, I mean, as far as like those types of skill position players, it's probably one of the more all around, like with receivers and running backs, most talented that we've had in a really long time. And the only real, holdback, which is going to make or break the whole season, it's just going to be, is the line, is it going to be good enough, quite good enough? They look pretty good, but they're not playing anybody yet. That's like the one thing you can't really tell against the Cupcakes, is the offensive line going to be able to handle the speed rush, Oregon has a couple of good defensive linemen. Are they going to be able to handle the, protect the quarterback against Oregon, and then in the playoffs? But aside from that concern, one of the big reasons why I give like huge advantages in the playoffs to teams like Ohio State, Georgia, and Alabama, even if other teams are looking good, like, Ole Miss and Tennessee look great, high-flying offenses, improved defenses that are also ranked really high defensively too. I just know that based on the recruiting rankings, none of those teams have the depth that we do and that Alabama and Georgia do. So when you have this many extra games that you're going to have to play, I just don't think that those teams are going to make it through that many games unscathed. Like, they're going to lose some offensive lineman or a receiver or something, and they're not going to be able to replace it like Ohio State or Georgia and Alabama could. And those are probably the only three teams, I think, in Texas. The only four teams, really, I think, that have a serious chance of winning, just because of the depth you're going to need to do it.
It's possible. Yeah, I think so. And I would have said Ohio State, like prior to the season, I probably would have had them ranked maybe 4 or 5 in the country, just because because of the offensive line, you didn't know how they were going to perform.
We didn't know Jeremiah Smith would be this good.
Didn't know Jeremiah Smith would be that good. But
I didn't think Judkins would be this good either. He's fat.
We knew
he is super fast.
But I was more concerned about the offensive line and quarterback.
Yeah.
And just now, and you know how Michigan played all those cupcake games. I mean, till game 8. I mean, everyone was like, "Hey, we have no idea how good Michigan is," till they play Penn State in like game 8.
Yeah,
that was a long time. It's kind of like Ohio State's going through that same process. Like, we're just not going to know until they actually play someone.
We don't have to wait quite that long. But yeah, you guys had to wait like most of the year. Like, we at least get Oregon really. Well, we get like Iowa. I think. I mean, they're not great, but at least they have a good defense, and we get them like week 5, and then I think Oregon's week 6. So we'll be able to test our offense week 5, and then week 6 we'll know if we're actually a good team.
I can't wait for Cade McNamara to be facing Ohio State.
Oh my gosh.
Cade McNamara is 1-0 against Ohio State,
I know.
I mean, I hope Ohio State's not, feeling some butterflies going.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. The other thing I wanted to talk about was a lot of people have been talking lately about strength of schedule. Now that used to matter, like in the BCS when there was 2 teams, you had to worry about random things like strength of schedule, and then even a little bit when you had a 4-team playoff. But now that it's 12 teams, it doesn't matter even a little bit. I mean, if you're in the SEC or the Big Ten, if you're in one of those 2 conferences, you could just play FCS games, your first out of conference games, and it literally doesn't matter at all. I mean, we were supposed to be playing Washington for one of our games, and it got canceled because they're in the conference now. So that's why we don't have a real game this year. This is like the only year we haven't played anyone real in ages. Because we have Texas the next couple of years. We have a lot of good games on out of conference. So there's just a lot of people like Danny Cannell and people on TV and everything. They're talking about how Ohio State and Ole Miss and Tennessee haven't played anybody yet, which is true. None of those three teams have, and they're all dominating all the stats because they're playing cupcakes. But they are at least dominating their cupcakes. Michigan is not doing so well against their cupcakes.
Cupcakes. But yeah, that's the thing. You can tell a lot of times, even if teams are playing cupcakes like Ohio State. Like I was saying, Michigan played all those cupcakes. You could still tell they were really, really good.
Here's what I will say.
Haters are gonna hate.
Here's what I will say about cupcakes. So you can't tell how good a team is if they destroy their cupcakes, but you can tell that they're not good if they don't destroy their cupcakes, right? So that's at least that's one thing they can tell you. So we know at least that Michigan is not great because they can't destroy the bad teams. And then, and now Ohio State, Ole Miss, and Tennessee, we're waiting to see how good they are. We know they're at least past that threshold because they can at least dominate bad teams. And then the other thing that's interesting that I was arguing with people about is the other thing you can tell about playing someone. Let's say you're playing a team that's not great, but not terrible. So like Georgia is playing Kentucky and they win by 1 point. I mean, that was a disgusting game. I don't know how much of that you saw, but there was a play where there was a pass to a Georgia player. He catches it like sort of on his back and rolls over, and the ball like pops up in the air. The defender from Kentucky grabs it and runs it in for a defensive touchdown, like 50 yards. And then that was the call on the field. It was not indisputable evidence one way or the other. But they overturned it, of course, because they're not going to let Georgia lose to Kentucky.
No, too much money.
So I mean, it was just unbelievable that they turned that over. I mean, it's just I figured that they would, but it's just crazy. But in that game, I mean, Georgia's their offense looked really bad. I mean, Kentucky just got blown out the week before against South Carolina, like 30-10 or something, and then they just came in this week and Georgia just couldn't do anything passing the ball. And it's not like Kentucky has some elite defense. So like that's one of the things that makes me think, okay, well, we know that Georgia's at least a good team, but I think we can also say that it's one thing to have like a semi-close game, but a 1 point game where you should have maybe lost if the refs weren't in your favor there. Like the Chiefs always have the refs. Like the Georgia was getting the Chiefs treatment there with the refs at the end. And I mean, you're winning by a point, like, and it wasn't like a high scoring. I mean, like 14-13 or something like that. It was just ugly. And so I mean, I just think people are like, well, they beat Clemson. I'm like, well, I don't think Clemson's very good. So I don't know at this point if that's as good of a win as people thought it was. I know they had a big win against the Cupcake this week, so people are thinking, well, Clemson's actually decent, but I don't know. I'm moving Georgia down. Like in my rankings, I would have, the top teams right now would be, Texas, Ohio State, Alabama, and I don't know. I mean, I would probably put
Texas,
maybe
Georgia's still up
just
there.
because of the depth. I would probably put them 4, just because I know they have good depth and they'll probably figure it out. But I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibilities that Tennessee and Ole Miss could actually be better than them this year, just because they did not look good.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. And
and Tennessee has an elite quarterback. Ole Miss has a really good college quarterback and a ton of talent. I mean, it's just going to be that's what like this year is so interesting because there's so many SEC teams where we just don't know. I mean, there's legitimately like 5 teams that could win the SEC.
Yeah,
and it's been a while since we've had that kind of depth in any conference.
Yeah. Hey, yeah, we don't know what's going to happen, but this is going to be a fun year, and it stinks that Michigan sucks in the very first year that we've gotten to 12 teams.
Yeah.
But in any case, we'll wrap it up there. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, and we would greatly appreciate it. But anyway, we are out. Talk to you later, Matt. Go Blue.
Go Bucks.